What is venture capital? And why have you taken on this crusade to drive venture capital finance in Nigeria?
I wouldn't really call it a crusade. It's something that I've been doing for many years. When we started our company, we became quite successful quickly, and we're very good at making profit. But we weren't so good at investing our profit. So I have a chartered accountant on my board of advisors, and I think everybody saw it, but nobody wanted to say it. But he's very blunt, should I say, and very overt when he wants to give feedback. So he's like, Ola, there's a big issue that we need to talk about, just looking through your accounts. Your treasury management is bad, you're not using your retained earnings properly, and you're focusing on the business, but you're not focusing on the investment side. And I said, so what's the investment side? So over a couple of days, he took me over some of the things that I should be doing. So I started investing in stocks and shares and fixed income instruments. And as I got a bit more interested in the investment side of things, I started doing more adventurous things. I started playing off the Nigerian Stock Exchange, looking at the book value of different stocks. But I think I started to realize I wasn't making that much impact on the businesses that I was investing in. So I had invested what I thought was a huge amount of money in one of the banks. And I went to the AGM. So they're calling out the names of large shareholders. And I didn't hear my name. So I thought there must have been a mistake. So I went to go and meet the CFO. And I said, you called out all of the names of large shareholders. I've spent, tens of millions on this share, and yet you didn't call my name. And he said, well, to own even 1% of the bank, you need to have invested over ₦1 billion. So obviously, you're not going to hear your name. And I realized that no matter how much I did on the NSE, I wouldn't be able to have the impact. It wouldn't be personal. I wouldn't be able to steer the organization. And it would take me a long time to be mentioned as one of the large shareholders. And around this time, myself and some partners started feeling the same way. So I made the decision, along with my partners, including Mr. Bode Augusto, who's the chairman of Greentree, to set up what is now one of the leading venture capital firms in Nigeria. I was one of the seed investors. I'm also one of the founding directors. And it was to, take advantage of this capital class where we could have a bit more influence and where we could, for me, do more meaningful work. So work with young people, work with technology, emerging technologies, work with inventors, work with makers, work with innovators, to try and help them scale their ventures.
So Greentree has been in existence for how many years now? And
5
what has
years.
been the impact in terms of funding and financing in Nigeria? And which are the spheres of companies you've been looking at?
So Greentree is sector agnostic, but we're not stage agnostic. So we like early stage ventures, but we're sector agnostic in terms of the sectors that we've invested in. About 60 to 70% of our portfolio is financial technology. So payments infrastructure especially is very, very attractive to us. And I think that, fixing payments and financial inclusion and allowing people to partake in the economy or become formal members of the economy, so to say, is a really, really important thing that needs to be achieved for economic growth. And I think, participating in those early stage rounds for those companies was really rewarding. I think another investment that we made that's really interesting, or a sphere that we invested in that's really interesting, is healthcare. So we made some healthcare and health tech investments. And I think that, Nigeria has a huge, huge issue with healthcare. We have to deliver healthcare at least a similar quality to what you see abroad, but with 1% of the budget, not 10%. not 25%, 1%. So how do we do that? And I think that, again, technology is a big part of that, using technology to drive down costs and create efficiencies. Another area that I'm still bullish about in Nigeria is software as a service, and the role that Nigerian developers and software developers in the B2B space can play on a global level. So our total revenue, minus everything, the government revenue from oil, according to AfriInvest, was $18 billion 2 years ago. In that same year, India exported over $100 billion in software. So I think that, you know, software and software applications, especially in the B2B space, have the opportunity to really transform the way we live in Nigeria by constituting an export for us that is far, far bigger than oil and more sustainable than oil and more friendly to the environment than oil. And if you look at some of the biggest startups, well, no longer startups, biggest companies in the United States, if you look, you know, 30, 40 years ago, it was General Electric, it was some of the banks, it was ExxonMobil, yeah, oil and gas companies, traditional companies. But now, software has eaten the world, right? The biggest companies on the American Stock Exchange are FAANG, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. So things have changed, and software has really changed the world and changed the world of finance. And I think that software has that same ability to create value in Nigeria.
I really like the spread in terms of looking at fintech, looking at health, which is something that I really am passionate about because of the need to address the health sector gap. And of course, software development, which of course, like you mentioned, India has really been transformed through it. And hopefully, with these investments, we can begin to see traction in those sectors. And looking at the macroeconomic level, does venture capital, in terms of investment, when you look at an environment that faces an impending recession, how does that impact venture capital finance prospects?
You know, if you look at the history of venture capital from the 1950s to the 1960s, even to the 1940s, venture actually thrived during recessions. And if you look at it, was almost produced during recessions as an alternative source of financing to people that needed it when banks had, you know, they were going through credit crunches and couldn't lend. So as we may be going into a recession,